Salutations, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. That's right, a whole new show brought to you by On the Wake Up Radio, titled Fellowship and Freedom.
Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Fellowship and Freedom, brought to you by the good folks over there at On the Wake Up Radio. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer. And guess what? I'm actually joined by an epic, amazing guest, Brad Burris, the host of the Crush the Opposition podcast, as well as the chapter president for the Proud Boys out here. Brad, my man, how are you?
Good. Freedom Faction. Great to be on, man. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, I know we are going to have not only a fantastic conversation, but hopefully we're going to wake up some people along the process. So really, my friend, the pleasure is mine.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things to say, man. I'm willing to go wherever you are. So wherever you want to start, man.
Well, I think let's set a good base, talking about America. I think that's the real reason. that's one of the real reasons, a lot of people are here. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, for sure.
Yeah.
A few years ago, you wouldn't think that it was important to have, not necessarily radical patriotism or anything of that nature. But a few years ago, it wasn't considered taboo to care about your country, to care about your family, your legacy, or anything. What are your thoughts, Brad? Why do you think we've gotten to the point where it's a bad thing to be American?
They really have turned it into a bad thing to be American, and I think this is probably the first time in American history where if you support the seated president, people accuse you of being a foreign influencer or a racist or any number of things they want to call you, and all you're doing is supporting a lawfully elected president. I mean, those are the times we live in. That's pretty crazy. I don't know how it cascaded down, I guess just the slow creep of incrementalism, but here we are. We're on the verge of full-blown Marxism in America, and half the population seems to be buying it. It's pretty alarming, So,
I'm glad you brought that up, because we're going to be talking a lot about Marxism, the Fabian socialists, what is considered the modern-day left, and how, if you ask me, a lot of these people have been radicalized and conditioned to believe a certain narrative that's being pushed by the mainstream media. So I'm very glad you're talking about the Marxism. Recently Trump got exonerated from this whole Russian collusion hoax that was perpetrated on America for 2 years.
Right.
For 2 whole years, they basically put our entire country to the brink, about to have a war with Russia over false accusations. Now,
right.
Whenever, just so we can have all this on the record, whenever Trump made that announcement that he was exonerated, or that the announcement was made, at that same time he was hosting Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, I just think that's symbolic of he's saying, I don't necessarily work with Russia, I'm working with the state of Israel. But people don't hear that. What they hear is, well, we want him to work with Russia so we can be right. You have people that are doubling down on a delusion that has radically it's radicalized them to a point of delusion. They called it Trump derangement syndrome, but now they're just they're disassociative. It's crazy.
Well, that's one of the characteristics of the left. When they get caught doing something, when a person they're accusing gets exonerated, or when they're finally on the chopping block, like Adam Schiff is, for instance, his colleagues are calling for his resignation on the Senate Intel Committee, and what you'll see these people do, they don't back off when they're caught. When the game is over, they pretend that it's not, and in fact, they double down. You see that with Adam Schiff. The entire committee calls for his resignation, and instead of saying, I made a mistake, maybe I should step down, he's just doubling down on his accusations of Russian collusion. The same thing with Jussie Smollett. What happens is they get caught. They're in a blatant lie, and people are trying to gloss over this Jussie Smollett thing as if it's no big deal. The guy tried to start a race war in America. That's a pretty serious deal. And the same characteristic comes out of him. He's caught. The Chicago Police Department busts him. They do a thorough investigation. They find out he sent the letter to himself. He paid off the Nigerian brothers to pretend to be white MAGA supporters to beat him up in Chicago just to stir the bees hive. And when he gets caught, instead of backing off and slinking away, he has doubled down. And him and his lawyer are now demanding apologies for something that never happened. And it's the hubris of these people on the left, and it happens on the right a little bit too. But at this point in history, it's a major problem on the left, and it's incredibly noticeable if you just read the headlines. Well,
it's like we're literally dealing with people who are delusional,
right?
Like delusional schizophrenics who refuse to It's like if you caught a kid with his head in the cookie jar, you discipline the kid. You'd say, "No more cookies for you." These kids think that we're the problem.
Right.
It's like they think that we're the issue, that we're the ones we shouldn't condemn them, like we shouldn't call them out, like we shouldn't expose the lies, the deception, and the manipulation that they're doing. And in doing that, they're deluding themselves and creating this kind of this psychosis where everybody's against me. I'm always right. And in a weird way, that's
absolutely
creating this authoritarian disassociation. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it really does. And I got to say, in a way, a lot of it is our fault because we've allowed this behavior. This behavior can't come up unless we are sitting alongside and enabling it and letting it happen. And nobody gets in trouble for these things. He was facing 16 felony counts, but because he has connections through Kim Foxx, who has connections to Michelle Obama and the SPLC and organizations like that, the fact that he is well connected, 16 felony charges were dropped. I mean, that's pretty significant. That's another historical thing, and it illustrates the hubris of these people. It's beyond arrogance. It's self-destructive, self-confidence. It's really incredible to watch, and it's sad to watch Western civilization travel down this path when we can be so much greater in so many other ways. We're stuck doing things like this. So we're at an interesting time. Right.
I truly agree. I feel like we have, the other awesome part, about what else Brad does is he's a painter, and so I'm not autistic, but artistic. I like to sketch a little bit. I like to do a little bit of writing. I like to work with a little bit of music. But we could be doing this together. We could be working on music. We could be painting. We could be creating. We could be sculpting. We could be building. But instead, we're having to dedicate our time and resources to exposing the lies and the manipulation that obstructs even the creative energy from flowing into the world. I feel like that's what's dangerous about it is we live in beautiful times. I think everybody can see that. But what's happening is you have this runaway media with a corrupt government gaslighting all of this behavior, and instead of us actually being able to take this time, use this beautiful moment that we are in to try to get ourselves out of this predicament we find ourselves in, like you just said, they're doubling down. There's so much that could be learned from actually apologizing. There's growth that could occur. There's changes that could be made system-wide from just saying we screwed up. But rather than doing so, they're doubling down. They're getting cozy in bed with the devil.
Exactly.
And it's getting dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And America, we decided to stay the shining city on the hill in 2016. If you notice, basically all the other countries on Earth, minus 5 or 6, some of the smaller countries, they've all basically signed on to the New World Order. They have the European Union.
Yes.
They have the Trilateral Commission, et cetera, but America decided to stay America. We didn't go along with the North American Union. We decided to stay the shining city on the hill, and we did that by electing Donald Trump, love him or hate him. He was a symbol of us saying no. The false song of globalism. We don't sing that anymore, like you said, and that was this is really our chance for a new renaissance. And I'm glad you bring up art, because that is what really separates Western society from the third world and from other undeveloped countries and from war-torn countries. We have such peaceful conditions, and we have such a high standard of living that we can spend our time creating art and creating aesthetic beauty around us and really enriching each other's lives with our individual talents. We have a chance to do that. Instead, we have decided to go after each other, and now we're at each other's throats. And I think, you would probably agree that we're in the middle of a culture war here in America. Thank God it hasn't turned to a hot war, even though it's tried a couple of times. We're choosing to waste our time doing that when we can be going to the stars with architecture and art and science and mathematics and everything that has made Western society great. Our philosophies and our philosophers of old we have such a rich culture, and we're choosing to ignore all that. We're choosing to go backwards. It's funny that these people call themselves progressives, because what I see is a whole lot of people regressing, going backwards. So it's kind of frustrating to watch. It's we have a real chance. We said no to the New World Order, and we have a real chance to really turn things around and make America great again, like he says. And I don't know. We should go there. We'll see what happens.
That's why I legit get fired up whenever people say America was never great, America sucks, and all this other stuff. It's like, can you imagine shitting on your roots like that? Can you imagine looking at your history, selectively finding one piece of it and saying, I hate my life because of this instance? Imagine the level of psychosis that person has inflicted upon themselves. It's crazy.
Right.
I'm like,
absolutely.
You can look at our history. The idea of and we need to calm down because I'm getting fired up. We were talking about this the other day. Even with what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, about terminating your entire legacy. Think about the sheer evil and wickedness behind just that idea alone. And you now,
it really is.
Just take it into the country, your roots, your history, your nation, things like that. Now they're literally saying it's bad to have that. It's bad to have roots. It's bad to have history. It's bad to have culture. It's bad to even add on to it. That's why I'm glad that you're talking about the culture war, because that's the other side of the Renaissance. They see that there's beautiful things happening within the country, around the world, because there's a certain time frame that we're in. I feel like there's a spiritual aspect to it. The Spirit of God's being poured out to us. And so they're using all of these other things to distract us. They're using politics. They're using race. They're using collapsing religions and all this other stuff to distract us, instead of us allowing this creative energy to be working through us. You said the false song of globalism, right? These people are so sophisticated with how far back the agenda for control goes. I mean, the American agenda. You can even look at things like Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. And all of these different types of things, but we said no to that. This is our one chance to try to try and show that this is dangerous, and what they are trying to offer us is unilateral enslavement under the guise of saving the earth. Think about how
absolutely
deceptive and manipulative it is.
Right, absolutely.
It's deception and manipulative.
It is really spot on. And when you say, we're not allowed to. We can't celebrate our culture. We can't be proud. We can't have a lineage. That only applies to Americans. When AOC talks about that, she's specifically talking about American citizens aren't allowed to carry on their lineage. I'm sure she celebrates the fact that Americans have, on average, 1.9 children per couple, which isn't replacement. You need at least 2.1 or 2.3 for replacement. And we're now in decline as Americans. Meanwhile, our borders are completely wide open, and we are getting armies of third worlders into our country who have an average on 4 or 5 children per couple. So what ends up happening is the fact that we said no to them upsets them so much. They realize that we're not going to swallow that pill. So their solution is to simply replace us with people that will swallow that pill. And when I say armies that are approaching our border, I don't mean that they're armed and they're coming in as a ground invasion, but they're coming in with their votes. There are places in California
weaponized
now,
third worlders.
Absolutely.
Weaponized third worlders.
That's what it is. They come in with their votes, and they realize that we're not going to vote the way they want to, so they're bringing in people who will, because they can create a permanent underclass of impoverished, illiterate people who can never crawl out of the crab bucket, so to speak. So they have their serfdom. They finally have their feudalistic dream, and they push all this through feminism and the emasculation of men. And that's why it's so important to have these men's groups like the Proud Boys, because we get together and we cheer each other on while, you want to turn on the TV, all you have is sitcoms that bash men, commercials that bash men. You can't get away from it. And so you're browbeaten all day, and then you finally get around some like-minded men where you're allowed to be yourself. And it truly is refreshing to your spirit, and you can get on and you can be a strong man for the rest of the week. You can enjoy your life the way you were meant to enjoy it. And, it's important to have these fraternal organizations, because it really, developing these interpersonal relationships among each other is how we fight this whole thing, in my opinion. So
I definitely want to get into like the Proud Boys, the Brotherhood stuff, and all that later on, because it's entirely, you're spot on. You're 1,000% accurate. This is why it's important. This is what this show basically represents. The idea of having like fellowship, being able to have like the serious conversations about what's going on. But people need to start having these conversations in their local areas, because they need to see the different types of things that are taking place. Like when we're over here talking about weaponized third worlders, we're in New Mexico. We are over here on the border. We see what actually happens. People that live in middle America, people that live over there on the coast, they don't understand it. We're right here, so we have a whole different perspective, and that's why we're a lot more focused than a lot of other people. And to clarify that as well, we have 2 more migrant caravans coming, some that are actually from Honduras. Mexico's allowing them to come straight through. I'm actually wondering, how long is it until we actually start having people expatriate from Venezuela here? You see, that's the other time bomb that people don't want to think about. But this is, when we're saying all these types of things, this is what we mean by like things such as Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the idea of weaponizing the third world so that they could have a permanent working class. Just the other week, Nancy Pelosi talked about lowering the voting age to 16. And think about it. They literally do not want high volume information voters. It's always low information voters that vote a certain way. People like ourselves who can connect all the dots, who don't want the government in our pocket, who literally want liberty and freedom for everyone. That's an idea that most people who do not consume information, knowledge, or even implement those types of things, they can't comprehend it. They think of freedom only offered to them only offered through the government. And that's what's dangerous about all of this. You have these radical, delusional, authoritarian people carrying out some of the craziest political stuff we have seen in modern history. And they're creating this state of lawlessness to allow all of these new voters to come in and basically change the country. We were talking about this before we actually started the show. If we do not keep fighting, if we do not keep trying to inform, if we do not keep trying to educate people, communism and socialism will be in our country within 2 generations, if that.
Right, absolutely. And like I said to you before we started the show, for some reason the cultural Marxism is concentrated on the coasts. And you're right in the sense that they don't see what it's like here in Middle America, or if you're on a border state. There's a reason that Arizona is particularly conservative about their borders. There's a reason we used to be at some point. There's a reason Texas is, because we're the ones who are directly affected by that. A lot of the coastal people, they don't see that. A lot of the coastal elites almost have an ethno-state up there. They hardly have any diversity, but they want to preach to us about how important it is to accept diversity. Yet they come from neighborhoods that are predominantly one color. So it's funny that they dismiss what we're down here actually dealing with, all the diversity that's around. And The other thing too is that with it's academics as well. These kids in our colleges, they're not being taught a whole lot of arithmetic and English anymore. They're being taught a whole lot of cultural Marxism and how to be a feminist and how to marginalize men and how to divide each other up into categories and how to have it's just divisiveness. They learn how to be divisive. They're learning how to kick up a civil war in college. That's basically all college is now, is how, come with us. We'll teach you how to be a cultural Marxist. And
it's radical indoctrination centers. They truly are radical indoctrination. Well, whenever you're not allowed to express an alternate viewpoint without it being openly discussed, or you guys can really get into depth about it, whenever you're having a certain ideology put onto a pedestal while you are actively smothering other ones, that's authoritarian. That's indoctrination.
Right.
That's not academia, where you're exploring different ideas, where you're taking on different viewpoints, where you're actually truly liberal and you're very curious about all of these other things. But people don't think about that. What they're doing now, and this is the reverse psychology of how crazy all of this type of stuff is. This indoctrination program is so massive and laid on that it's affected culture, it's affected businesses. I mean, if you say the wrong thing these days because you're not abiding by whatever is culturally relevant at that time, you're going to be chastised. Like, think about the lunacy of that. How are we going to know what's appropriate if they change it every other day?
I think so many of us have actually lost interpersonal relationships over the last 2 or 3 years. It doesn't just affect business and the economy. I came out and I decided to support Donald Trump, much at the behest of many friends and family. Those people exited my life. That's how deep-seated this whole thing goes. It affects your interpersonal relationships. It negatively affects you on a spiritual level because you start to think, oh, geez, am I really wrong about this? But you look further. Go ahead.
My question then, because I think everybody has experienced this. For the record, I've not entirely supported Donald Trump. I've always been cautious. To be honest, I don't really support either party. I just expose the left-right paradigm. But, my question is it's not necessarily Donald Trump that people are getting mad about. Is it the idea of making America great again? Like, I think there's so many different psychological questions to ask of why somebody would, openly shut down the idea of doing anything good, or at least trying to rally behind this idea of making things better, that it's crazy to see people shoot themselves in the foot. That's where I have, I guess, that confusion or that question. It's like, do you actually hate Donald Trump? Do you hate America? Do you hate the idea of making America great again? Like, what is it precisely about his whole thing that creates this level of chaos and fury within someone?
Right. In my theory, what happened, Donald Trump is an outsider. Like I said, love the guy or hate the guy or criticize the guy or whatever. The fact of the matter is he's not a Washington insider. He's a real estate mogul and a reality TV show star. So they didn't expect him to get in there, and he's never really been part of the elite. The fact that they got so upset over his election really exposed the fact of how closed of a circle they've had for so many generations, and how tight-knit they were, and how close to royalty our government was getting. The nepotism and the inner circles and the inside trading in the economy. They have these tight little elite circles, and Donald Trump is he's a wrench in the gears. Love the guy or hate the guy. You can even question his policies if you want, but he's definitely an outsider, and I think that's what upsets people the most. And so what happened is those elite groups got upset about that, and their ideas, they fed talking points to the media to upset all the millennials and start Antifa and, America's fascist now and America's racist now, and so that's my theory on why they hate him so much. It's just television indoctrination. they're told to, and they pat each other on the back when they do it. So what ends up happening is you have a negative feedback loop between the elite and the beehive they're stirring up, and now regular Americans are being targeted for that, and interpersonal relationships are destroyed among each other because one side buys it and the other side doesn't. So
I want to speak on real quick
my theory on it.
Some of the nepotism, and this is important. The American royalty that's growing up in politics. I recently spoke about Nancy Pelosi right there. Also in California, she has her nephew Gavin Newsom. He's now the new governor there. Okay, and so what happens when we start having people passing the power and keeping it within themselves? That's another thing that I don't think a lot of people think about when we're talking about these controlling elites and these oligarchs, these nepotists. They're literally trying to concentrate the power within them. People like Donald Trump, this, love him or hate him, he's exposing the system, and he's getting people excited about politics and getting involved and asking the right kinds of questions. And that's the type of stuff that I can get behind. I support it because a few years ago, people really didn't even care. People just kind of shut stuff down. They didn't look into it. They didn't research things. They didn't take it serious. But now that you have somebody like Donald Trump in office, he's stirring the pot. He's getting people excited, and I think that's
right.
The other aspect that I appreciate about a lot of this is people are starting to ask themselves the harder questions about what they truly believe in, rather than having their ideas foisted upon them. And so maybe because I was involved in stuff before politics became this serious, I already had like an awareness of where this was going. It seems like people who are actively getting involved now, they say, "Oh, Donald Trump's a Nazi." Oh, they parrot talking points that they've heard. They're not actually doing the research. So when we start talking about people who are heavily invested in this now, to a degree, we're talking about how they have taken Democrat money. They've taken money from people like Hillary Clinton, George Soros, all of these other mainstream people who have steadily taken the time to influence this current generation of voters, the next generation of voters, and you see them pushing for the generation after that. So, like as a
right, absolutely,
as a layman's person.
Donald Trump he's the wrench in the gears that we needed. We were headed off a cliff, basically, and who cares if the wrench is rusty or what brand the wrench is or the wrench's color, the wrench's hair is. We needed to get that in there to stop from going off the cliff. So
orange man bad.
Thank God we had that. Yeah, orange wrench in the gears.
But think about it. That's that NPC. But yeah, you're right. This is we needed that moment to shine a light because there were people like us already aware of like how corrupt the government is. Donald Trump is a manifestation of that. We're allowed to say, "Hey, look at all the crazy things that are going on surrounding him. This is what we're telling you about. This is why we're trying to point it out. You need to see how this all connects." And I think people you have people who are slowly starting to catch on, thank the Lord, who are actually seeing, things like globalism, things like this cultural Marxism, the Fabian socialism. You see people who are slowly catching on and waking up to this. And on the other side, you have people who are saying, "You know what? Let's burn America down. I don't want to appreciate it. I don't want to love it. America sucks. Orange man bad."
Right. And I myself, I have my particular ideology is pretty much, I'm a right-leaning libertarian. I always kind of have been, but I've always sided with whatever side is being more reasonable at the time. When the Republicans were going crazy during the George Bush era and launching a million wars that never ended and dropping bombs, I was against the Republicans back then. Because the other side seemed more reasonable. And this time around, I cannot be on the side of the left. The left left me. They've gone off the rails completely into this cultural Marxism world. You got AOC telling us that we're not allowed to use combustion engines anymore, and that we're going to have a completely renewable energy economy in 10 years, and we're going to knock down every building and rebuild it so that it can be environmentally friendly. I mean, these are psychotic ideas. This is not, she likes to talk about how big of an idea it is and how, this is the green, it's basically what Woodrow Wilson did. It's like, no, it's way beyond that. What you're demanding is crazy. And guess what? Mao has already tried it. Pol Pot has already tried it. Joseph Stalin has already tried it. Maduro in Venezuela has already tried it. I mean, socialism and communism like that brand has been attempted 32 times. And I think there's maybe 2 communist states that are actually viable, still standing, which would be China and who knows, maybe 2 or 3 other ones. But I mean, it's been tried innumerable times and it's failed, and they're still trying to push it. Why can't we enjoy what's worked? America was built on free market capitalism, being able to pit ideas against each other in a free market and see which idea wins out. That's what has built us up into this massive prosperity where we have the highest standard of living on earth. And these people just want to browbeat America and tell us that we're so bad. Meanwhile, everyone wants to come here. So which is it? Are we so bad? But everyone sure wants to be here. So what really is the situation? You know what I'm asking? It's crazy.
I'll tell you what else is crazy. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be with Brad Burris. That's right, the chapter president of the New Mexico Proud Boys and the host of the Crush the Opposition podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Salutations, my friends. I'm here to talk to you about, that's right, CBD oil. CBD oil can reduce the risk of relapse among alcohol and cocaine addicts, and you know they're trying to flood us with both. According to a 2013 study published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, CBD was proven to have these benefits: relieving pain and inflammation, having antipsychotic effects, reducing anxiety, helping to fight cancer, relieving nausea, treating seizures, lowering incidences of diabetes, and also promoting cardiovascular health. Realize that in 2013, Purdue Pharma received FDA approval for an opioid drug that claimed to help curb the opioid addiction. This will actually help you curb your usage of opioids as well as your reliance upon them. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.
And we are back. That's right. I hope you liked that first segment. We got a lot more coming your way. Brad, my man, if you could, tell the audience about your podcast and where they can find it real quick before we get into some more good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find my podcast at cto.media. I'm the host of Crush the Opposition. We do a podcast every Friday night, and we have one out. Check that out. You can also find me at bradleyburris.com. It's being built right now. You can find my art there as well if you're into that. So.
And you said your podcast is on iTunes, Google Play, major podcasting platforms.
Absolutely. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. We have an RSS feed up. And if you want to just stream through the browser, you can do that as well at cto.media.
That's what I'd like to hear. We will definitely get those and get those links in the description bar below. Powerful man. I hope you guys understand why we have him on. During the break, we talk about this type of stuff. We clearly this is all coming from like a place of compassion. I had to tell Brad because I wanted to get in some of this migrant caravan stuff, how it ties into this global push for socialism and global communism, all this other stuff. But when we're talking about migrants, sometimes we have to say we're not racist. We're thinking about the conditions that they are in. We're thinking about our current conditions, how their addition to our current conditions is going to change things. And for some strange reason, we're in a time period now to where that's racist to think that way, to talk about this type of stuff. So we have literally been conditioned or mind controlled to reject information and approach certain topics simply because it could be controversial for people that don't want to think. Like that's crazy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have been conditioned to be incredibly apprehensive about talking about this, but really it's an economic issue and it's a property rights issue. And it's a constitutional issue more than it is a race issue. I think race would probably be at the bottom of what's important over this.
You would think
when we talk about this topic, yeah, you would think, what does race have to do with illegals crossing the border? if it was predominantly white people doing it, I would still feel the exact same way. So, I mean, to me, the race issue, the race factor, when we're talking about immigration, is probably the last thing on my mind. What's on top of my mind is the economic strain this is putting on us, what the cultural strain is going to put on us, because these people are coming here and they're not assimilating. We're assimilating to them, okay? They're changing us when they come
Yes.
here. We're not changing them when they come here. And you can't have a culture that predominantly supports Sharia law coming into your country, because they are not going to support your constitution. They cannot appreciate the nuances of a constitutional republic. They know what they know, and they're not being told that they have to assimilate. No one is demanding that they become one of us when they come here. The reason that we're so great is because we are who we are. And if that changes, you're going to see us, slowly begin to look like the rest of the world. Just in a couple of generations, like I said, Americans are not having children anymore, but the migrants who come here are absolutely having children. So, I mean, within a couple of generations, we could have full-blown Marxism or full-blown Islamofascism. If we're not careful, we really have to look out for what's happening here. What's happening at the border is not okay. They're trying to say that it's a manufactured crisis, and it drives me crazy, because you can look at the numbers. We're getting upwards of 100,000 illegal immigrants crossing the border every month now. That adds up. I mean, that is an insane amount of people, and they're trying to act like this is a manufactured crisis, when it's clearly not manufactured. Those are numbers. The numbers are not manufactured. That's coming from our own government agencies. So,
and what's crazy too is that people look into like how these migrants are getting here, the funding, the traveling, the food. This is a full program. Like, this is a full. This isn't just them hearing from somebody else, hey, we should go to America. This is like a full, legitimate program that they're rolling out. And whenever he's saying they're not assimilating to like American values, he's right, because they're think about it. Think about like people who migrate here, who migrate here legally. They go through the process. They learn about American culture, American history. They know more about our own history than most modern day Americans. They know the presidents. It's part of them having to assimilate. But the idea behind what's happening now is to literally overload the process to where people do not assimilate, to where they do bring their culture here, and we assimilate to them bringing their culture here. This is why California looks the way it does. This is why Seattle looks the way it does. This is why the coastal areas, and slowly Middle America as well, is beginning to look the way that it does. And the whole idea behind this is to literally level the playing field. We were talking about in the first segment things like American exceptionalism, rugged individualism. This is what built America. They don't want that these days. They want people that are victimized. They want people that are impoverished. They want people not informed. They don't want that. They don't want people lifting themselves up by the bootstraps. They want people putting their hands out, saying, "Hey, where's my free handout? I want to be a serf of the state." That's the dangerous part. They're not assimilating to saying, "Hey, I want to build a future for myself." They're saying, "Hey, I came here, I followed those orders. Where's that future you promised?"
Right, and you got to understand, these aren't the Ellis Island immigrants of old, who came here legally. These are people who are coming in here with no forethought of what they're planning on doing, other than taking advantage of the welfare state, or sending their paychecks to Mexico. And I mean, we're up somewhere, something like a $500 billion deficit between us and Mexico every year. I mean, that is an immaculate amount of money. That is crazy to think that we're losing that much money. And it is due in large part because of illegal immigration. And I do want to speak to the fact of perpetual victimhood that you brought up. I'd like to speak to that because to me, that is a result of we're becoming increasingly feminized. And let me preface this with saying, obviously, yes, I have a lot of women in my life who I absolutely love and I absolutely respect. And but I have to say they're becoming a smaller and smaller margin as I'm watching this thing unfold, because you have, along with that cultural Marxism in college, you're also having we're being feminized, and you can see this in strange things like drag queen story hour in all these local libraries. Who's responsible for that concerted effort? How did that pop up all over the country all of a sudden, and things like that? And the result is you're losing your warrior class of men, and it becomes increasingly easier to take over a society when the warrior class lays down. And if they can get us to do that voluntarily through brainwash or through cultural Marxism or through feminism or whatever, they're going to do it. And the goal of all that is to really wipe out real manhood, which is to be a protective defender of the things that you care about and love. And they're teaching men not to do that anymore. They're emasculating us and teaching us that we need to be self-centered and not have children and not love women anymore. And that's all done through feminism. And, you know, I really, truly feel bad for the women that are going down this path, because they're going to find themselves with no interpersonal relationships later on in life. And how many men are going to find themselves without interpersonal relationships later on in life because they've bought it? And to me, again, it goes back. That's the importance of having a brotherhood and being alongside like-minded men where you can say what you want to say and be who you are, and no one's going to shame you for it. You know, a lot of us,
cucking.
We've been exactly. That's what it comes down to. No cuckoldry. We've accepted and adopted this culture of total cucking and laying down and being trampled, and you know, some of them enjoy it. A lot of the left are masochistic people, and they really enjoy being dominated. It's a weird cultural thing, and it really shows up in their politics. The feminization, you know, the feminization, it's got to stop, because that is just through the roof outrageous. And to me, that's the number one issue, is the feminization of our society, because the goal is to get rid of the warrior class to where America is only as strong as its toughest woman. And I'm sorry, I am a gender realist in the sense that I believe in XY chromosomes, and I believe in biological differences between men and women, and I believe that we have unique traits that make us very different from each other, but no less valuable. And to completely shift everything so that one side falls off the map, we're going to be open for total invasion, and we will have a very, very weak country.
You didn't want to go to Baskin-Robbins and check out the 31 different genders?
It's actually 57 now. All right, it's 57, bigot. Just kidding.
Oh wow. I'm sorry. I'm just a low information bigot. I thought it was 31. Right. I'm not open-minded enough.
Right. You're going to get a knock on the door from the police. You know, that's happening in the UK and in Europe now. If you they call it dead naming.
If you tweet.
If you call a transgender person by their birth name and not by their new magical pretend fairyland name, then you will get a knock on the door from the police. You know, meanwhile,
this literally ties into what we were saying at the start of the show.
Right.
With this is that delusional. This is them dead naming. Whenever I started hearing about that was probably some of the craziest stuff I had ever heard. It's like, you're going to get in trouble for calling this person their real name. That's dangerous. These people have literally broken off from who they were before and become something else entirely. They want us to believe in a fantasy that could change at any moment. This is what I keep trying to allude to with the illusion, with the delusional mentality, this disassociative nature that they seem to have, the lunacy that we're being forced to deal with. Like, there's so many different things that you went over, with the perpetual victimhood. You know, the destruction of the nuclear family, the feminization of the men, the emasculation of the men, you know, removing sports, removing challenge essentially from like life, removing adversity from like all kinds of different things, you know, pussifying the population, call it whatever you want, because it's the truth and people can see it. You know, we could talk about the fluoride that's in the water, the lead that's over there in Flint, what they're spraying us as far as like the chemtrails, the GMOs and things like this. What we're essentially talking about now is the culture war. This is the socio-political culture war that they're pushing onto us. So whenever they're saying, no, you're not allowed to have culture, you're not allowed to have history, you're not allowed to have boxing, you're not allowed to have fighting, you're not allowed to have civil discourse, you're not allowed to have any of these types of things that refine you, because that's what it is. That's what adversity is. It's that iron sharpening iron. Nope, They want to pussify you. They want to put you in a state of pacification to where you don't understand that you have that drive in you. Like, and we were talking about this beforehand, alluding to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her trying to tell us to stop having kids. Think about how the mindset of these people is to literally distort and manipulate everything that is natural. They are literally acting from a state of unnatural, chaotic, I don't even know what you would call it. I want to speak on this, and I want to get your opinion on a few more things. How can somebody literally be, how could somebody have so little willpower to think for themselves so that they literally listen to a TV, a manufactured person like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whoever answers the casting call and does it the best? How could somebody have that weak of a mental fortitude to allow themselves to essentially like destroy their lineage? Like, think about the parents that take their kids to this drag queen story time. Think about the mindset of allowing your child to take hormone replacement, to go through gender reassignment treatment, to say, you know what, Billy, you're right, you're Becky. Think about like the mindset of that. What are your thoughts on that? I truly think that's insanity.
You know, to me, I like what you alluded to earlier, because you have the cultural aspect of, I call it the cultural castration on my show. It's cultural castration. So you're getting bombarded with propaganda about how you're not a man and how worthless men are, and don't bother having a family, etc. But you double that with the chemical castration of the fluoride in the water, and the chemicals in the food, and your thyroid and your pineal gland. You're just attacked chemically on top of all that. So it's this double whammy of chemical and cultural castration. And you implement something like that, you basically have a manless culture. You have a culture that's void of masculinity completely. And really,
they got us wearing.
That's the goal, right?
They got us wearing skinny jeans. They got, guys over here. And I think man buns look cool if you're a samurai. They got us over here wearing eyeliner. They got us over here getting mani-pedis. I'm just like, I get having proper hygiene, but it gets to a point to where some of these men are straight acting like females. And then, like you said, again, with the cultural castration, you have them basically prostrating themselves not only to the state, but it becomes this weird, not even testosterone-driven thing. It's an ego, pride-driven thing to where you're trying to look better than another man, when you shouldn't even be trying to look better than another man. You should be trying to make your woman look good. But that's the craziness of it all. That's part of it too. Is we've been trained to think like women in the sense of we need to self-love, self-care. And, the men start doing that too. And pretty much all you have is an entire culture who's obsessed with self-love and self-care. You see it on social media every day. Someone is talking about how into themselves they are and how you have to love yourself first. And I'd like to remind everyone that the first tenet of LaVeyan Satanism is to focus on yourself. You are the center of the world. You are the center of the universe. You're important. Me. And I think part of it is our generation is largely fatherless, unfortunately, which is really sad. A lot of us didn't have dads growing up, and a lot of us didn't have a strong male figure to say, no, a man doesn't act like that, son. That's ridiculous. Stop acting like that. We're raised predominantly by women who, they often try their best, but more often than not, a male child comes out either extremely effeminate or very, very narcissistic and barbaric. Is the two patterns that I've noticed the most, because there's no discipline there. The child does not grow up with the fear of consequences in a fatherless household, and at the same time, they're taught, a mother's nature is to nurture. Again, I'm a gender realist. I think women are excellent nurturers. A father can't nurture a child the way a mother can, in all honesty. So you have the mother nurturing the child and teaching this child, you're the best. You should be proud of yourself. You're the best. And in a nuclear household, you have the father saying, yeah, son, your mother's very proud of you, but guess what? There's a whole world out there that will kick your ass, and I'm here to talk to you about that and get you ready for it.
because the world doesn't care. The world doesn't, the world doesn't think of you the way your mom thinks of you. And so what happens is we have an entire generation of narcissistic men who are focused on fashion and fiction, and they're into video games at 30 years old, and they would rather stick around and LARP for 10 years instead of cultivating a family and cultivating intellect and building and creating and starting a business and doing the things that men like to do. And I'm glad you brought up boxing, because that is my favorite sport. I'm absolutely an enthusiast of boxing. I love pugilism. I love its history, and I love American boxing. I truly think it's the greatest sport of all time. And it's a lot of us have MMA now, but I still prefer American boxing, because that's just two men going the rules and as best they can, and that's something we can't lose. Men used to we used to resolve our issues like that in the masculine society. People wouldn't get away with doxing each other. You wouldn't get away with calling someone's employer and telling their employer that your employee supported Donald Trump, so they're a white supremacist, and getting them fired. That kind of thing wouldn't fly in a masculine society, because you're likely to catch a serious beatdown. So, not to advocate violence, but there's something to be said about trying to be masculine within this feminine society. It really is, again, it all comes down to the conspiracy to wipe out the warrior class in America, in my opinion.
I agree. It's the idea that they literally do not want you to dig deep, realize that you have problems. Like this, what they call toxic masculinity, if you ask me, is just justice. You see, it's whenever it's proper love. Not this fake love, not like this rainbow that's being put out there. No, it's fatherly, discerning love that they call toxic masculinity. It's because you're right. There's some things that a man will not allow to happen, because we see what happens if you let that type of behavior perpetuate. But people don't want to be called out on the behavior that they're perpetuating. Like you said, people calling people and doxing them or swatting them and stuff like that. That's like some chicken neck cowardly stuff, because it's anonymous, and you have people who like to do that, who don't have that kind of fellowship, who don't have that kind of brotherhood, that kind of partnership, that kind of connection to the deeper human experience, right? Of just being basically a man and saying, I'm proud to be a man. Look at my wife, and doing that.
Absolutely.
We somehow lost it.
Absolutely.
They want to be proud of the gamer score, right? They want to be proud of the latest game that's coming out. They want to have pride in all of these things that don't necessarily define them and actually take away the power from them. And think about that. They play all these games where they're just some rugged badass out there doing all kinds of epic work, literally writing their history. But when you try to take them outside to go camping or go hiking or even go for like a little walk, they can't even sprint down to the end of the street. They're like, the sun, it like harms them. And these are the meek that are taking over. These are the weak-minded people, the low-information voters, the people that have low willpower, who are not going out there, who are experiencing this adversity and trying to change themselves. These are the people that want to stay inside all day, all night, and tell you how to run your life while you're out there getting it. One of the powerful things that we left that meeting with the other night was the skill exchange, and I feel like that is something I'm going to try to start pushing to a lot more people. Don't hang around your buddies and talk about beer or bullcrap like that. Come around men that understand what's going on and say, hey, this is what I can bring to the table. Great, I can bring this to the table. We need to start having this conversation and stop letting these people push this culture onto us. Like, that's the dangerous part, is we're not coming up with a counterculture that promotes home values, the nuclear family, mom, dad. I had Charles Casson of Truth is Terrorism on a few months ago, and one of the things that we had talked about is the family rights movement. The idea that you see the LGBTQ 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 movement going on. You see all this stuff for the trans movement. You see all this stuff for the feminazi movement. Where's the family rights movement? Where's the movement that says, hey, I love my mom, I love my dad, I love my brothers? Where is that at? And that should show you
absolutely.
the mentality that we're up against.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other part that they want to break down is the family. That's where we get so much of our protective passion from. You know, you have something to fight for when you have a family. You have skin in the game.
Yes.
You're worried about your family's well-being. You love them. And a lot of these elitists, they either don't have families or they've decided to totally do away with that idea in their own lives. They resent us for it, and on top of that, they realize that the only way that they can gain that full control is to wipe out the family and make everyone feel alone. If you're on a team and everyone's supportive and loving each other, it's really difficult to break that up. And the Proud Boys, one of our tenets is family. We focus very much on the importance of family. And, you know, sometimes a guy can't make a meetup because he's doing this with his wife or his kids. We don't look down on that at all. Hey, sometimes you can't make it because that's what's important is family. And the other thing is we venerate the housewife. We defend and we support and we love the housewives of America. That's another demographic they've been browbeaten into thinking that, oh, well, you're not a career woman, so you're not worth anything. Oh, you stay at home and support your family. Oh, you're homeschooling your child. Well, then you're worthless, and we're going to make you feel badly about that. And so the Proud Boys are very supportive of the housewives in America and in Western culture in general, because really the woman is the center of the household. That role has really been marginalized and beaten down by, it's just another brainwashing technique from the media and from, from all these other sources. And what you have is you end up not having housewives anymore. You end up having women that are competing with men in the workplace constantly. And if you want to work, that's fine. Of course, you have a right to do that. But what we're saying is the ones who choose not to work, the ones who stay home, they should get the same respect as a woman who does work and who, and they've that's really one of our core tenets is supporting women in that role, in that traditional role, because it's vitally important to society. And they've been taught that it's marginal and it's not something that's praised anymore. So women have largely stopped doing that. But in times past, that was just a vitally important role, and they've all but done away with it now.
That's the craziest part about this, is that we here in America, we exalt women to where men want to have a woman that they're proud of, like the arm candy wife that has her stuff together, that is trying to homeschool. Yeah, that's a dream. That's what this is about. That's what America was supposed to do. We wanted to have that popular family. We were told, go forth, multiply upon the earth. And that means that you want to have a super hot wife that you're willing to show off to the entire world, but also understands the values. And that's the beautiful part about it. Real quick, Brad, are you single?
I'm actually seeing somebody right now, but I have been for a long time, but I'm finally seeing somebody. So,
ladies, I'm sorry, he's taken. You know what else is taken? We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and how she doesn't want you to have kids. But are you surprised? Could you imagine somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about family values, trying to lift us up, trying to get us to where we need to be? Or is she just talking all kinds of craziness? I don't know. We'll talk with Brad about this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to On the Wake Up Radio. And now an announcement by Yurima Karama. Enjoy.
Peace, love, and light, family. Yes, I am Yurima Karama. I'm the founder of the Unity Walk, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And our objective is to go across the nation, uplifting and uniting melanated communities across the nation as well as overseas. And we have a festive event coming up. It's April 6th in Newark, New Jersey. The address is 271 South 9th Street in Newark, New Jersey. This is a fundraiser event. So you can go on Eventbrite. That's www.com/ the Unity Walk fundraiser to get your early bird tickets now. Let me tell you, we have speakers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. We have his wife, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries. We have speaker, Dr. Aaron D. Johnson. I myself, Yurima Karama, will be there, as well as a few others, to speak and talk to you about uplifting our community and actually coming with solutions, receipts. So if you can make this festive event, please do. If you would like to give a love donation, that's always welcomed also. We, again, are a nonprofit, and our objective is to get around this country and unite our communities with actual solutions, but we can't do that on air. It actually takes finance to uplift the nation. So I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to seeing you, and thank you so much. Support this great event. Peace.
I don't know what that was. It could be a jet car, could be a rocket, or it could just be me and Brad coming in on this episode. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to this edition of Fellowship and Freedom, brought to you by the good folks over there at On the Wake Up Radio. And I am joined by our elaborate guest, our light in the dark of the night, Brad Burris. How are you, my man?
I'm doing good, man. This is it's been really fun to sit in here, bouncing back and forth, riffing off each other, solving the world's problems one segment at a time, So I'm glad to be here.
During the break, we were talking about the social credit score system, and Ra was telling me that I committed a great dishonor to God Emperor Xi Jinping. I said, you can't even commit sabuko, which is ceremonial suicide, without having your social credit score lowered. And Ross said, you know what, EJ? Your social credit score went down. That's Japanese. I have to give my my immediate praises to God Emperor Xi Jinping for bringing dishonor to China. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. And that's how it is now, too. You got to be careful. You're not allowed to say the things that you want to say. Even if they're really funny, you might not want to say it. We have we've got our social media up, and that's basically setting the groundwork for a Chinese-style social credit score system. And that's all there, on Facebook. I caught a 30-day ban on Facebook. I'm highly targeted as the New Mexico Proud Boy chapter president. As you can imagine, Facebook is not a big fan of me. I posted a picture of the Proud Boys with the Proud Boy logo. We gave almost 200 pounds of food to a local homeless shelter on Thanksgiving, predominantly to people of color, and we were accused of white supremacy, and my Facebook was banned for 30 days. I have the screenshot, and
Wow.
It's just outrageous. I'm going to keep the screenshot forever because it was such an awakening moment for me that, wow, this is really where we're at. I'm not allowed to feed the homeless people on Facebook without catching a 30-day ban. Doing something positive for my community was struck down as a blasphemous act to the Facebook gods. So that's what say something, That's what say something, That's I'm blown away.
These are the
by
technocrats.
I'm still blown away by it.
Well,
yes,
these are the technocrats behind the cultural Marxism, and I'm glad you're bringing this up, because this is a good way for us to pivot into things like the sustainable development, the Green New Deal, and people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. These are the only people that are allowed to virtue signal. These are the only people that are allowed to do good. If you're doing good, inspiring others, well, that's bad. The system wants to inspire people. You're not allowed to affect people in a positive light, bringing joy and happiness to people, Brad. No.
No, absolutely.
Only
God
Facebook
forbid.
is through their news feed. God forbid you want to do something out of your way to try to help somebody, and then tell the rest of the world, hey, you should do this too. Nope. Facebook didn't come up with the idea, therefore you're banned. That's crazy.
Yeah, it absolutely is crazy. And, these companies are pushing really hard, and you get into the property rights issue of, maybe they are a private entity and they can ban whoever they want. But are they really a private entity if you're receiving that much
Nope.
corporate welfare if the NSA is diving that deep every day into your communication system and using you as a spying hub, are you really a private company? If you're Google, who pays $0 in taxes because they're so heavily subsidized and they manipulate their data, are they just doing what a private company would do, or is there more to this? So I'm really wondering what the future holds for these companies, because I think the government is going to designate them as utilities like they did with the telephones and the railways of this country. I think you're going to see a 2019 version of that, where these companies get designated as utilities or as publishing companies, and then all of a sudden the free speech rules are going to have to apply to them. I don't really know the nuances of how that can happen, or whether that's done through an executive order or what kind of a bill would be introduced, but I don't see these companies lasting this much longer, because their stocks are going down by kicking off a large number of their customers. You know, I've given hundreds of dollars to Facebook in advertising money to advertise my art, and they don't want it anymore. In fact, they unpublished my art page. No political
wow.
No political information on my art page at all. Just strictly paintings and demonstrations, and it's been crazy to be targeted like that. Why would I get wiped off for that? I mean, why would you unpublish my art page? And I largely use social media to make money that way. And so I think a lot of people do. A lot of people rely on those social media clicks for their business. And if your business is getting kicked off, man, we're kind of moving into mark of the beast territory, like you alluded to earlier. You're not allowed to buy or sell. The chairman of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, he was accused of being a white supremacist on Facebook, which is funny because he's Afro-Cuban. He's pretty far
with a name like Enrique. I'm wondering how he could be a white supremacist.
Yeah, well, in clown world, that's what they designate. So what happened to him is Chase Bank stripped him of his bank account. He's not allowed to have a bank account now because Facebook said so. And so he got into it with Chase, and the same thing happened to Martina Marcota, who's she's a right-wing Instagram model. I'm sure a lot of people have heard her before, but she got her bank account stripped too. It's like, here we go. You're not allowed to buy or sell unless you're part of the system, unless you've kept your mouth shut and you were a good little cuck. Well, you know, we're not going to be able to deal with you. So
let me ask you a question real quick. You know, since we're talking about Facebook being like a public utility and essentially eventually becoming state-run, what are your thoughts about Google moving in China? I feel like this is a perfect example of how something can be made in America. The idea can be made in America, but if it's being practiced in another country, it doesn't shift well. It doesn't adjust accordingly. Like the idea, DARPA is behind a lot of different things. Like our government is behind a lot of different things. You can look into the LifeLog project and see the correlation between Facebook and LifeLog. That's a whole other show in itself entirely. But this idea that we were supposed to have, you know, free speech, First Amendment, free exchange of ideas, the free marketplace of ideas, things like this, that's here. They don't want to hear dissenting opinions in places like China. And whenever you have people like Google moving to China, they eventually have to become state-run. That's where all this eventually goes, so they can get the tax benefits of being state-run. What are your thoughts about Google moving to China?
Oh, I'm not surprised that Google would move to China, because they have shown their true colors in the last few years, that they are full-blown cultural Marxists. You're not allowed to say the word family in the Google workplace because it might offend someone who, you know, doesn't have a family or whatever. You're not allowed to say those words. There's been employees that have leaked documents out of Google's headquarters where they're talking about, you know, we're not allowed at all to say certain words. If someone comes in and says, well, I identify as an ornate train station, well, then you better call that person an ornate train station every day, or you're going to be fired from Google. And that's how far they've gone. So their move to China doesn't really surprise me because they are full-blown cultural Marxists. So China is appropriate for them. But I think a lot of what you're talking about is, I think it's Operation Dragonfly, something like that, which is Google's.
Yes. Their censored search engine.
Right. Yeah. They developed specifically for China so that the Chinese people get bombarded with total propaganda and no free thought whatsoever. And Google developed that. And it's like an American company who's supposed to have the values of free speech and a company who's supposed to have the values of a free market. They're headed to China. As far as I'm concerned, I would say good riddance, and I would start slowly cutting them off from American commerce. But the problem is they're one of these companies that is too big to fail. They're huge. Google is massive, you know. They're a household name now, and they're slowly turning into Skynet from Terminator 2. You watch it over the last couple of years, and it's outrageous what they're doing. And Google is a, I'll go as far as to say they're an outright evil company. They're total evil, and what they do is destructive. What they used to do was constructive when they were just a straight, flat-out search engine, a simple search engine that was revolutionary for the information superhighway. You could type in anything and get information about it, and now it's you type something in, like the other day I looked up Ann Coulter. I went through probably 6 pages of negative propaganda about Ann Coulter before I got to Ann Coulter's actual personal page. I was really blown away with they layer things so that you can't find them anymore. You look up someone else, if you were to look up an MSNBC pundit, for instance, something like that, you're going to get up-to-date information immediately. But if you type in someone who's on the other side of the political spectrum, you're going to have to go through 6 layers of propaganda until you reach the person actually saying what they said themselves. So what Google has done, I'm not surprised that they're moving to China. As far as I'm concerned, let them stay there, and they can. I don't know. I think the United States government's going to have to take a security threat. If you're going to become a Chinese company and uphold China's values, you're like Huawei, you know. It's another situation like that. We don't want that technology here because it's a threat to our national security. The Chinese government does not need all of American Google's information that they collect on users. That can now be part of China's database. We don't need American citizens being databased by China, and that's what Google will do with their relationship with China.
And something people should think about too, I remember reporting on it a few months ago, the Chinese were literally hiring people out of like LinkedIn to use them to like help smuggle information. Like they were going on LinkedIn, talking to people, wiring them money so that they could have this fake job, and then they would use that funnel for people to smuggle information across. Like what's going on with China, with Google, and all that is a huge, huge security risk. I mean, I was talking about this just the other night, you know, and there are some checks and balances in play, but for the most part, people taking social media, their cell phones and things like this onto like military bases, yeah, they have checkpoints where you have to leave your phone there and they'll give you a phone for on the base. That's just the software, or that's the hardware. Think about the apps. Think about the patterns. Think about like all the other stuff on the back end that these people have access to. Like whenever I was doing system administration, network security, part of my job was to check and see whether or not the Russians and the Chinese were trying to hack us, and like at what times they were, notify people, and then, you know, basically stop the hack from happening, you know, document it and put it away. This is only 7 years ago, and I'm seeing some of the security risks with that while working at like Dell or something. You see, you talk about these iPhones today, the metadata that people emit every single second, you know, not even talking about how people are able to ping phones, Stingray technology and all this other stuff that they have. What's going on with China and the harvesting of our information and the manipulation thereof? It's a huge risk, and a lot of people don't want to think about it. That's that true ethno-state, right? China is a growing and increasingly growing problem that we really need to address. Like, yeah, Russia's a thing, but China's getting all the money, all the technology. They have the troops, they have the numbers. That's something we seriously need to pay attention to.
Right. And China also owns Hollywood now. That's another huge aspect
Yep.
of what's going on. If you notice movies in the last couple of years, guess who the savior always is? Oh, it's China. If you watch that movie, The Martian, which is, it's a pretty good movie. I read the book even too, but who comes to save the day at the end? No, the Americans screwed up. The dumb Americans blew it. And guess who comes in to save the day? Well, it's the Chinese. And of course, they have way better technology. But what they don't tell you is that China largely has stolen so much of this technology. This has been a huge scandal. And what blows me away the most, the fact that we have Chinese-made military goods and Chinese-made replacement parts in our helicopters and Chinese-made computer chips in our iPhones. We're really going down a dangerous path with this stuff, and it also has to do with the fetishism of technology, right? Where you just want to accelerate, you want faster and faster technology and bigger and better technology, and there's always something new and something different to latch onto, and it's like this thing with the 5G situation. They want to put 5G towers up everywhere so that our cell phones are even faster. Like, well, I don't really need my phone to be any faster than it is. I get plenty of information on it very quickly, sometimes faster than I would prefer, to be honest with you. But they want to set up 5G technology all around us, and really, that's going to microwave the population. That's another form of, they want to destroy our DNA with 5G microwaves. And, if one of those things goes up around here, man, I'll tell you, I don't know how long it's going to last, because it really is a threat to just normal everyday people. 5G technology is not something we should go with. There's no reason to have 5G technology other than the coastal elites and the elites of the world would like to microwave us. Ideally speaking of China, because that's who's really pushing the 5G technology. So go ahead.
I recently had on Justin Harvey of We Are Change Orlando on the main transmission on Factions of Freedom, and he was in Orlando talking to the city council, making them aware of the dangers of 5G. And this is why people need to be informed, and why we also need to start acting in the third dimension and start making moves. Justin, he appeared before a city council a few months back, talked to them. They looked into it. He's now going to city council meetings to try to figure out where they're putting these 5G towers. He's not able to stop them, but he is able to put them in unpopulated centers. Everything Brad's talking about is true. People need to really look into the dangers of 5G and why we need to start coming up with solutions. I was talking, I forget with who, but the idea of that being the solution. We're aware of the problem. That allows people who are entrepreneurs, people that are business-minded, to come up with things like LED clothes or LED-based clothes, stuff that reflects EMF, stuff that doesn't allow Wi-Fi to enter into you. There's all kinds of different solutions and things that are out there, but we need to start configuring our mind in how we're actually going to combat it, because they're going to roll these things out, and they already have the plan. But if we have this information, we have the knowledge, we need to start figuring out how to get the know-how out there so other people can start implementing these solutions. And look at China, okay? Just to touch on that real quick. Look at all of the different things Brad said. How many different things are made here in America? And on top of that, you have people here within the country who could care less about America, who don't want to buy American, who don't even want to shop local. Give all your money to Amazon. Think about that. And then they wonder, well, why is our country going down the crapper? Because people aren't consciously spending with their dollars. They're not voting with their dollars, voting with their lifestyle. They're not trying to create this pro-American Renaissance-based future that's pro-human, that's oriented with this. You talked about how it's people getting comfortable with the technology, right? They just want the latest thing. They just want the newest thing, not really looking at the dangers of it. And usually it's not the best thing for people. But what I'm trying to get at is just this mindless consumer culture, to where people are not conscious about what they're consuming and how it ultimately leads towards a automated lifestyle, to where you're just going through the motions, waiting to be updated, instead of updating yourself, thinking for yourself, and trying to figure out where you would want to take yourself. And that's a dangerous notion, because now we have all these other aspects in society that are engineering us and conditioning us to act a certain way. We're literally being bred not to ask questions. We're being taught to accept everything, don't question anything, and look at what this is doing to us. We're devolving. We're regressing.
Right, absolutely. And that's a whole other aspect of technology is, if you can get the warrior class to sit down and play video games all day, we're not going to actually send men to war anymore or expect them to be warriors, but we'll give them a video game that simulates that. Meanwhile, your physical body is sitting there deteriorating from lack of activity and from a sedentary lifestyle. So, that adds to the aspect as well. It's and I'm a person who likes video games, but I consciously think to myself, man, I can't spend too many hours on this. If I have some time to kill or whatever, I'll play them. But I'm very consciously aware of the fact that that's not a real world. So don't exist in that. So you got to keep those kinds of things in mind. It doesn't mean you can't live a life of no fun, but you have to consciously be aware that you can get caught up in things that are totally meaningless when you should be out cultivating personal relationships. Go get some sunshine, go do some push-ups, go meet a girl, and that's a big part of the Proud Boys too, is we try to get people off the couch. We're trying to get men off the couch again. Put the video game controller down, pick up these boxing gloves, or pick up a football, or pick up a wrench, anything, just to engage the world around you. And it's not all about being a big, tough, scary brute. I was talking to one of the brothers last night about it's not all about brutish, tough guy culture. We need to bring intellect back. We need to bring art and architecture back, and we need a second Renaissance. That's really what we need. And to me, that starts with men fraternizing again. We've been shamed out of fraternizing with each other. We've been told that, that's weird. You guys get together like every 2 weeks. What are you, some kind of a cult? That's so weird. Men have historically gotten together in these groups forever. You have the Shriners, the Knights of Columbus, the Masons, the Elks Lodge. I mean, there's a million different fraternal organizations, but we've been shamed by the feminist culture that's weird or that's strange. And there's people on the left, they accuse us of being homosexual because we hang out with each other. And it's like, well, in your culture, isn't homosexuality not looked down upon? But that'll be their first insult to me is how gay I am, right? So they don't really it's a new thing, and people, it got shut down for a long time, but it's making a big of this brotherhood, and I love this brotherhood, and I love the skill exchange idea we had the other night. I mean, that was so profound.
Yes.
Everybody brings something to the table. Everyone has a skill to offer. The other day I showed these guys. We set up a heavy bag, and I showed them how to do some combinations and how to stand correctly and how to protect your face and how to tuck your shoulders in and all that kind of stuff. And it's valuable things. And one guy can teach us how to use a firearm. The other guy can teach us how to build a fire without a lighter, or matches, anything. And those are valuable ideas, and they're things that are good to have in the back of your head. So it's like brotherhood is important, and really, like I said, you feel spiritually cleansed after you hang out with all these guys because you can unapologetically be yourself, and we're proud. We're unapologetic. We hang out with each other, and we poke fun at each other. We laugh and make fun at each other like the way men are supposed to do. You can't do that in an office environment anymore.
Nope.
You can't joke about penis size in the office, but you can do it at a Proud Boys meetup or wherever.
4 inches is the average.
That's right. That's right. A perfectly average 4 inches. Okay, but no.
I don't have 4 inches for the record.
Just for the record.
Above average. Yeah, for the record, I'm above average. I learned this last night.
Oh, that's so good. So good. I mean, it's hilarious.
But it's true. This is true. Men, like it is a biological, instinctual thing to want to build and want to protect. You cannot do that if you do not know what you're protecting yourself from. These feminazis, they don't want to have fun. They're like the moms you know, they see you out here kicking tail, go into karate class, go into football, doing all this type of stuff, and they just say, instead of being proud of you, they're just like, oh, well, I wish you wouldn't play so hard, or I wish you wouldn't do so much, or protect yourself. That's the nanny state. Okay, that's not right. That's synthetic. It's simulated. That's not natural. Okay, yes, worrying and having motherly energies. I'm not sure. I'm not a female, but I understand that comes with it. But protecting and isolating your child from the harshness of reality, that does more danger than most people think. And whenever these people are playing nothing but Xbox, spending time watching nothing but football, living in this simulated combat world to where they're not actually testing themselves, they're becoming this kind of disassociative person. They're living in this bubble world. They're not actually out here in the real world. And whenever you're having these kinds of fellowships, meeting with these kinds of brotherhoods, having these kinds of discussions, that's the real world. You're meeting with other people who have their own sets of success, their own sets of failures, their own sets of problems, their own sets of joys. And that shows you, hey, you're not alone. You have things that you can work on. This guy's going to work with you on that. And that's a powerful thing. But people don't want to admit that they have problems so that they can try to get better. And that creates that disassociation that we keep touching on. It is natural for us to do all this type of stuff. Like, I got super giddy, about the idea of learning carpentry, chucking axes, chucking knives, learning weapons training, going camping, hunting, fishing, doing all kinds of man shit, because that's what we should be doing. But in this world where we live our lives through our phones, we've been disconnected from what is natural, what is right, what is our divine purpose. That's why it is a man and a woman. We are here to be the stewards of Earth, and they're literally using propaganda and social engineering to have us shut off our natural biological functions.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and that's what they're trying to do. And that's what we got to get back to. Men need to start doing man shit again. Put the video game controller down, put the television remote down for a few minutes. Get up, get out there, and you'd be surprised the positive effect a fraternal organization like the Proud Boys has on young men. A lot of us, myself included, I was really lost in a lot of aspects of my life, and getting together with guys that will tell you the truth, not only their opinion, but they'll tell you the truth of what they think about you and how you can improve your life. We bring each other problems all the time. That's one of the things that we do often is, hey man, I'm going through this weird thing, or I'm in this certain situation. I really don't know what to do about it. And you have an outside perspective from one of your brothers who genuinely cares about you and wants you to do good and wants you to continue reaching for that archetype of manhood that we all want to reach, and it has a profound effect on each other. We've really pulled each other out of the muck in a lot of situations, and we've really changed each other's lives for the better, and it continues to grow. People show up to the meetups and they're like, my God, this is what people are so afraid of. This has been a wonderful experience. These guys really are in tune with what's happening, and they really want each other to do well. It's like, yeah, it's called a fraternity. And, men coming together like that, we've been shamed out of it. And it's nice to get away from the wives and the girlfriends and the kids for a day or two and go camping and get everything together, and you go back to your family and you're a better man for your family because of it. So,
yep.
That's.
I went on like a 20-minute rant because we were talking about vaccines. I just got heated, and I forget who I was going off in front of, but it was his first time at a meeting, and I was over here literally not sweating, but I pulled up the video about how these people are in Arizona, how the cops were kidnapping kids because they were unvaccinated. I was pulling up the stuff that's going on in New York. I'm over here getting heated and passionate, not necessarily about the idea of vaccines, but what's happening to our kids, what's happening to our future, what's happening to the generations, and we're not allowed to talk about this. I'm not allowed to get upset and emotional about this because I have this deep passion for humanity. But people who don't have these types of brotherhood, these types of fellowships, these type of fraternal orders that need to understand this type of stuff, you're reacting to something natural. it's not an act. It's not fake. This is truly genuine. Yeah. And you're living in that state of authenticity instead of putting on the politically correct mask that you have to put on every single day and killing yourself at night. That's not what this is. What this is liberating yourself, saying, hey, look, there are problems going on. These guys get it. There's people around me that get it. They might not have all the answers. I might not have all the answers. But I tell you what, we're going to start figuring out some answers, and we're all going to start lifting each other up, because that's what it's about. That's natural human behavior, to want to lift up your fellow man and say, hey, look, I got you. I got your six. Wherever you're trying to go, I got your six, because I know you got a right head on. But people don't understand this. And we were saying this during the break, with what you see happening with these feminazis, these authoritarians, these delusional tyrants. I don't even want to. I don't want to say on the left, because I know some people that are left leaning and liberal that are decent-hearted people. These are extremists. These are accelerationists. Right. These are authoritarians. Right. These people don't understand that we need that at this point. Rebellion is a must, because tyranny it's rampant, and that's why you have people like the Proud Boys that are coming together, saying, "Look, there are a number of things under attack, which are the core foundation of any civilization, and you have a runaway media and a corrupt government advocating for the destruction and the dehumanization of all of us." It's not about whether or not you're black, whether or not you're white, whether or not any of this type of stuff. They are coming for us, so we need to go to them.
That's exactly it. We got to stop apologizing, and we got to start charging forward. We got to start making our own advances and our own offensive moves against the people that are concerting this crazy feminization of our culture. And a lot of that's what the Proud Boys, that's what they are. We have veterans in our group. We've had law enforcement in our group. We've had medical personnel. I mean, carpenters, artists, musicians, all types of men. But the core tenet of masculinity remains that you're defensive and protective of the things that you love, and you're protective of your country, and you're protective of your family. And a lot of men have been emasculated to the point where that fraternal instinct is not there. And a huge part of the Proud Boys is reigniting that in these young men. You know, there's plenty of real tough dudes and real men in our group, but we also accept guys who are struggling and guys who maybe not be so masculine. Maybe they're not happy with their state that they're in, and they're tired of their lives, you know, and then they join the Proud Boys, and something reignites in them. Something happens. I've watched it happen multiple times now. These guys just get their lives together. You know, after working with them for a couple of months or whatever, all of a sudden they wake up one morning and they're like, my life is significantly better because I'm surrounded by masculine energy, and I'm told that it's okay to have masculine energy myself. And they really do turn into better people and better men. And that's, we got to bring that back. We got to have that. That's the best way to fight back against all of this, is to just have the warrior class, you know?
And let me tell you, this is something else I've kind of noticed. You know, we're talking about all this masculine energy. I think it's important for the men that are listening. Bro, chicks love this stuff, okay? And I'm just telling you, because you're telling them things that they inherently know, but they themselves are having to smother. If we get out there, you start talking to people, start talking to chicks, start telling them the truth. Don't scare them with the truth. Start educating them, informing them. Hey, have you looked at this? Hey, have you ever wondered this type of thing? Not only do you form great bonds with random people, but you begin to plant seeds in a fellow human being of the opposite sex who might eventually want to have sex with you. And that could be pretty fun, because you're beginning to discover yourself and also liberating some along the process. But that's what this is having these types of orders and these types of brotherhoods where you come together and you say, hey, this is where I'm trying to get where I am. This is where I'm trying to get to. This is the response you're going to get. You're going to get people that want to support you and put you in that position. And that's what it is. It truly is men and women against whatever this authoritarian, technocratic, satanic evil is. Like this, the New World Order it's on fire right now, and I think everybody can see it. Think about, and just for the future. I'll say this and I'll pass it to you. Think about where you are now, How would you feel if somebody took the time to go out of their way to present this information and to have a fully in-depth conversation with you? That's where we need to be, because we are so actively engaged in this. We need to go help other people light that spark in them as well.
Right, absolutely. And that's another thing too, is guys, women love the Proud Boy thing. The feminists will tell you that, oh, we're weird, or we have weird ideas. Excuse me. They've got weird ideas, or we one of our things is that once you become a second degree, you swear off pornography and masturbation, and you channel that energy into cultivating an actual relationship with an actual person. So, no more simulations. That's a good way to describe the Proud Boys too. No more simulations. Pornography is not real sex. Masturbation is not real sex. Meeting a person that you actually care about and cultivating a relationship with them, and then having sex with them consensually without any weird, it's sad that we're at the point where we have to, we got to do that, but that's where we're at right now. We've been broken down, and porn culture is so destructive to men and women, and we just won't have it. The Proud Boys, part of being a man is not acting that way, and you go find the real world, and you find real women in the real world. Then that's the point of that. Feminists will tell you, oh, that's so weird that they do that, and they tell each other whether or not they can masturbate, and it's like, no, we're just doing the healthy thing. It's funny that someone would make fun of you for not masturbating, right? It's like, why is that a bad thing, but that's where we're
you're
at.
Expending your
up is down and down is
energy.
up, right? Absolutely. You save that. You harness that energy, and trust me, your wife or your girlfriend will be so grateful that you do that.
Yes, they will.
Trust me on
that. Yes, they will.
So.
Yes, they will.
Yes, they will.
Oh man, Brad, I love you, brother. This is.
I love you, man.
I love this.
It's
Guys,
been great.
He's right. Your lady's gonna love it, because that's the crazier part. Not only will your testosterone go up, but you're cool with your testosterone is gonna go up. Like, you get into a stride. That's all I'm saying. You get into a stride. There's a certain confidence that stepping into who you're trying to become brings with. And when you're not over here basically shooting your load on things that aren't important, you begin to understand not only your purpose and why we're doing these types of things, why you're becoming who you are, why you're growing through what you're growing through, instead of letting it just happen to you. So we have we got a few minutes left. Did you want to try to wrap up, how evil someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying something like that? Did you want to try to wrap that up, or did you want to close it out on another note? I could go either way, my man.
Sure, we could talk about that, because I covered that on my own podcast the other night. What Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is proposing is, she's claiming that she's wanting to protect us from the apocalypse, but really the Green New Deal is the ushering in of the apocalypse. And history shows that. This is not the first time someone's come up with this idea, to have seize the means of production. It's all Marxism. And, I've heard you bring up the Hegelian dialectic on your show before. And, that's a position I really would like to educate people on, because it's the problem, reaction, solution. And Marxism,
yes,
which I studied pretty closely in Marxism. I got an A+ in my critical theory class, which is basically how to be a communist. I got an A+ in that class in college, and I wanted to study the enemy. I really learned so much, and really, cultural Marxism. It's based off the Hegelian dialectic. It's based off of Hegel's theory that things are heading in some general direction. And if you introduce a problem, you can also introduce a reaction and a solution. You can push and pull society on a global scale in whatever direction if you have the power to do it. And really, that's the angle that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is coming from, is a total seizing of production, the end of combustion engines. And I don't think she realizes, things like solar panels take plastic to make, and plastic requires petroleum to make. And I don't think she thinks that deeply about these things. You don't just, you're going to have a solar panel factory that is petroleum based. And I don't know if she considers these things, or if she thinks this deeply, or if she's just some kind of a plant to push people even further left than they already are. You're going to make the insane toxic left go even crazier. It's been crazy to watch her talk about these things. And like I said, if the combustion engine goes, farmers aren't going to be able to use, they're not going to be able to feed their crops anymore. And that means nobody's going to be fed. It happened in Maoist China. They told the farmers, hey, you need to produce more crops. The farmers who had been doing it for generations said, no, that if we plant them closer together, it'll create bumper crops, which have no nutritional value whatsoever or market value, and everyone's going to starve. But of course, the Maoists pointed the gun anyway and said, do it, farmers. And shortly after, 60 million people starved to death, boiling tree bark off of trees to feed their family, because the proletariat finally got into power, apparently. So that's what she's pushing, and you need to recognize, we have to recognize where this crazy feminist, cultural, Islamo-Marxist, fascist hybrid is coming from. I know that's a lot of labels, but that's really what they think. It's a concoction of all the things that are bad for America, and it's coming down the pipeline.
I tell people this all the time. Obama's presidency was meant to bring America down to third world status, and then Donald Trump was supposed to come in and try to at least bring us up to something, only for them to purposefully crash it underneath his presidency, just so they could say that you see what capitalism did. You see what capitalism did. That's why it's bad. We need this global communism. We need this global socialism, and that's what you see them pushing today. You see them chastising everything that is capitalist, everything that's America, everything that's masculine, everything that's individual, anything that has to deal with this rugged individualism. And that's why, like I said, at this point, rebellion is a must.
You have to. And, all the stuff with the vaccines, they're going to start sticking people with needles at gunpoint in this country. Are you serious? That's going to happen now? That's a thing, I guess. It really blows your mind, because your body is really the last frontier. Your body is the final frontier on property rights. It's your temple. Right. Exactly. It's the final frontier on property rights. And if we're going to have in America where people can stick you with a needle and call it and say it's for the greater good, and you have no idea what's in that syringe, we might already be lost. If people start accepting that, I don't even know what to say about that at that point. I mean, how far down the rabbit hole have we gone where this is just okay now? You and I talked about this last night. You're not just getting the inoculation. There's so many other things happening in that vaccine scenario, and I'm sure you've covered it pretty extensively on your show. But that's the final frontier is your own body, and if it's to the point where people are doing whatever they want with your body, well, then maybe America really is already lost. So I don't know.
And that's why we have to fight for every single bit of freedom we have. Like we've been alluding to throughout the entirety of this broadcast, guys. Communism and socialism, fascism, it's a generation away. This is why I tell you guys all the time, you have to stay vigilant. But Brad, my man, thank you for coming on. This has been a powerful, powerful episode.
Oh, absolutely. It was my pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity and giving me so much time. I really didn't expect all this time on your show, so I truly appreciate giving me this platform and all this airtime to say what I needed to say. So thank you, man.
I know how it is. There's never enough time. But before you go, where can people find more of your work?
You can find my podcast at cto.media. And we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Play, we're on an RSS feed. And if you're interested in looking at my art, you can find me at bradleyburris.com. I'll have more content there very soon. That website's almost finished, so you can find me there as well.
And what would be your final words to the audience? What do you want to let the people know?
My final words to the audience is that Western culture has produced the highest standard of living on earth. It's worth saving. It's worth defending. Your family is worth loving. Your family is worth defending. It's time to stand up for America and do the right thing. And thank you so much for giving me so much time, man.
Thank you. This has definitely been a pleasure and an honor. And this is why we want to have Brad on. Brad, like I said, my man, thank you for coming on. I'll definitely have to have you back on sometime here soon.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. Anytime you want. I want to have you on my podcast as well. So let's get you going too.
And that's what it's about. Cross-pollination, man. Like this is the times we live in, such beautiful times. We've talked about the American Renaissance, the modern day Renaissance, the second day Renaissance. You know, you hear us talking about skill exchanges, working together, creating these brotherships and these fellowships. We truly do live in beautiful times, and I think it's important that we highlight these things. We come together, and when we do, think about the amount of beauty that we can produce. Think about the amount of excellency that we can produce, the wealth that we could just live in, that authenticity that we could just have. All it takes is our commitment. All it takes is for us to stay vigilant. All it takes is for us to have a focus, have a goal, have something to work towards. Like Brad said, put the controller down, stop simulating life, and live life. Once you get to this point, you know, the sky's the limit. You're, like I said, whenever Justin Harvey was on of We Are Change Orlando, you know, it becomes so liberating once you get to this side of it, because, yeah, you see these problems, but your mind also starts working on solutions, also starts coming up with all kinds of different patterns, answers, and things to do. You no longer feel helpless. You no longer feel confused or in this state of indifference. You commit. You become aware. You step into yourself, and then you want to start to help other people. That's what I was telling you guys about before, with sharing this information, not only with a beautiful female, but with people around you, you see. And that's why I wanted to have Brad on, not only to talk about this brotherhood, the Proud Boys, America, freedom, and so much more, but that's why we had him on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a powerful episode. I will be sure to put all of Brad's information in the description bar below. Definitely go subscribe to his podcast. Expect to see a lot more collaborations in the future, not only audio-wise, but, you know, with your eyes, because you're going to see them. There's going to be a lot of different things that we're doing to try to provide you guys with excellent content, relevant information, and hopefully the tools to make better decisions in your life. Don't become one of these low-information people who just kind of accept what they're told. Our whole purpose here is to inform you, liberate you, give you what you need so that you can live the life that you'd like to have. However, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I really have for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, and Brad Burris of Crush the Opposition, out.
Salutations, my friends. Have you heard of Shilajit? Well, to be quite honest, neither had I. But then I started doing some research and I found out that it was part of the Hindu Ayurvedic system of medicine, and for hundreds of years since its discovery, it's had the potential to help people live a healthy and balanced life. Here, let me read off some of the benefits for you guys. It increases your energy, boosts your libido, balances your mood, supports healthy aging, decalcifies your pineal gland, and we all understand how important that is, supports healthy brain health. It also helps regulate your hormones. There are so many benefits to taking this that I cannot put them in this single video. You can mix it in with tea. I like to mix it in with my pre-workout in the morning, and be careful, it's going to give you that boost. It's going to give you that energetic boost you need to get through your day. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction,
Imperial Media Collective.
Cindy Ashby Production.
On the wake up.